Something tells me this one's gonna take a while. Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for December 5th through 11th. This week I read 9 books, I watched 2 shows, I watched 3 movies, and I listened to 1 book. This was also the week of the Queer Lit Readathon, which is why I read so much, because I always push myself to black out the bingo board, and yes, I did that. Also, I had a thing come up in my memories from 3 years ago where I didn't want to get out of bed because as soon as I got out of bed I would have to talk about the 12 books that I read that week. So this isn't the biggest amount of reading I've done during a Queer Lit Readathon, but it's pretty close. Let's get right into this and talk about the first book, which is This Book Is Gay. Now this book I actually did the thing where you read a physical copy and you listen to the audiobook at the same time, and that way I was able to listen to the audiobook at a higher speed, so it was basically done by the time we drove up island, because we came here to pet sit and then the people we're pet sitting for, actually their trip got cancelled because of new international flying regulations, so we're not going to be pet sitting anymore, but we still stayed the week just to hang out. This method of reading was really good considering I was trying to get through a book fairly quickly, and I picked up way more than I would have had I just been listening to it on triple speed. However, the audiobook and the print book that I had were not the same edition, so occasionally there were things that were just slightly different, which was a little bit weird. Most of this came down to updated statistics and that type of thing, but then occasionally just some of the word choices were a little bit different, which was odd. Now on to the content of the actual book itself. This is meant to be an instruction manual for those who are queer or think they're queer or just want to know about queer people, basically. And this was okay. If it is your first book that you're picking up on the subject, it wouldn't be a bad one. There were a few topics it was missing, but it did cover a lot. I'll just talk about the next 2 together and you'll see why in a moment. I read Check Please #hockey and Check Please Sticks and Scones. However, I actually read the webcomic, so I didn't hold either of these physical prints. That's right, this week I read this entire webcomic, all 4 years of it, and it was lovely. I think I had only read the first year before, which means I had only ever read the first half of the first volume, because each of the volumes hold 2 years. If you've never heard of this webcomic before, it's about a boy named Eric Biddle who was a figure skater and goes away to college and is on the men's hockey team, and he's learning basically how to toughen up so he can take checks, and then he falls in love with his captain and things happen. The side characters are always so freaking delightful, and it's always wonderful to see what's going on in their lives even if they've graduated. This was an absolute delight, and by the end of it I was a little bit wanting to cry and a little bit wanting a lot of baked goods. Next we have Love After the End, which is an anthology of Two-Spirit and indigiqueer stories, and this was good. Anthologies are always a little bit of a mixed bag, so some of them I liked a little bit more than others, as you usually do, but all of these kind of had this feeling of hope for them. They were all looking towards the future. A lot of them had to do with leaving the planet and what that looked like, so it was a really interesting collection. Next we have Soul Circuit. This is about a woman named Jin who has this implant that she didn't ask to be put implanted into her. Basically she was a science experiment many years ago, and something that was put in her and is now breaking down and causing health problems, and if it's not fixed soon, she is going to die. However, she's also a busy lady. She's running an empire in what she likes to call Jin City, which is Pasadena. So while she's trying to do that, her bodyguards and doctors are trying to keep her safe, and it's a huge action-adventure sequence to trying to figure out how to fix what's wrong with her, and it kept me on the edge of my seat, actually. I very much enjoyed trying to figure out what they were going to have to do to try to find whatever it was going to be that was going to keep her safe. I will confess that I originally picked this up for the novella prompt as well as the blank prompt, because this one is definitely cyberpunk, and I don't think it was a novella. However, I can't find a page count for it anywhere. It was a digital copy, obviously. I got it directly from the author's website. I can't find a page count on anything that I search anymore. You can't tell me that it wasn't a novella, so I definitely counted it regardless. Next we have The Ship We Built, and this is a middle grade book written in letters. Essentially our main character got the idea to write letters and then attach them to a balloon and let that balloon take them to somebody else. So the whole time our main character is writing these letters to a person who won't necessarily get them, a person who isn't necessarily one person. Basically it just seems too dangerous to keep a diary, so these letters have to go somewhere else. Now this one can be a difficult one to read. Not only is our main character dealing with some isolation and some bullying, as well as trying to convince his parents about his gender, he also goes through some crushes as well as some sexual abuse by the hands of his parent. So yes, it is a lot, but it is also a very compelling story. There is definitely some hope in there. There's definitely a best friendship that forms. I very much just this book had my heart. Next we have Cobalt Blue, and this was probably the only book on this list that I was kind of about. This one was written in two different formats. In the first section, we're in the perspective of a brother, and it's written in the second person, so he's talking to somebody, and it's a lover that was a secret lover because homosexuality is frowned upon. We've never seen that before in any culture ever. This takes place in India, by the way. Also, there is a movie that just recently came out of this book, who was directed by the same person who wrote this book, because he is also a director. I didn't get a chance to watch this week, but I'll probably not watch it next week. The second half of the book is told from the perspective of the sister, and she is writing diary entries, and she also fell in love with the same guy. Now, there is a chance that I just didn't read this closely enough, and there were things that tied these two things together more than just the obvious, and that it was very profound by the end, but I didn't see that. Sure, it was basically, yes, these two different people fell in love with the same person, but we didn't even really get to meet him on page. Sure, he was there in flashbacks or whatever, but we really didn't get to know him. We didn't know why they fell in love with him. We didn't have these two characters talk to each other at any point about the fact that they fell in love with the same person. So yeah, this one just wasn't for me. Next we have Huntress by Malinda Lo. This one takes place in the same universe as Ash, but it is centuries previous, so it is very different. It's just in the same world. In this world, an invitation to the king has been delivered for him to go see the fairy queen. This is something that has not happened in centuries. However, he's a little bit busy, so he decides to send his son, and at the Academy of Sages, they also do some magic casting to figure out who should go with him, and it's one of their students, and then she has a vision that another one of the students also has to go. So we're mostly from the perspective of these two students, although this one was omnipresent, so we kind of got in everybody's heads a little bit. This is an action-adventure story of them trying to trek all the way north to try to find the palace and then figure out what the queen wants and then do the bidding of the queen, and then there's even another side quest after that. The big tension when it comes to the queer relationship in this is the two students kind of drift together. The one that saw the other student knew that that was probably going to happen. However, she wants to become a sage and they have to be celibate, so if she wants to do what she's been training all her life to do, she cannot fall in love with this other student. This was adventurous and action-packed and beautifully written, and I can't believe it took me so long to finally get around to reading it, but I have, and I really liked it. The final book I read with my eyes on this list is an arc that doesn't come out until I believe February. I think it's February. I hope it's February because I want you all to be able to read it very, very soon. And that's Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This is her adult debut and I absolutely loved it. I've also loved her middle grade books. They're fantastic, but this one is just so much fun. This one, like many great romances, is told from two perspectives. The first one is Delilah Green. She doesn't really go home very often because both her parents died really young, so from the age 10 onwards she was raised by a stepmother who didn't give a crap about her, and she had a stepsister who ignored her, so basically as soon as she could, she left and she went to New York and she became a photographer. However, she's being guilt-tripped to going back to the small town so she can photograph her stepsister's wedding. The other perspective is Claire. Now, she is one of the best friends of the stepsister who is getting married, and just out of high school she ended up getting pregnant with her high school boyfriend. They had a child together, however they're no longer together and he kind of disappears on them every once in a while, so that's a huge point of stress in her life. Additionally, the third best friend is pressuring her to get some because she needs some. So in her first perspective chapter, she is challenged to get the phone number of any person in the bar that she wants. Just get a phone number. And of course that's when Delilah Green shows up. She doesn't recognize her, she starts hitting on her, and Delilah basically thinks, I would definitely piss off my stepsister if I were to sleep with her best friend, so I should probably do that because this girl is hot. Now it goes on from there, and there are many wedding related shenanigans. They have a bunch of different wedding related things that are happening in this 2-week span, and Delilah's there to be photographing all of it. But then we also come to realize that the groom is a complete douche nozzle, and the best friends are basically trying to figure out how to make the bride figure that out so she doesn't end up marrying this dude. This one is just full of different types of emotions and people coming to these understandings about other people's perspectives. And yes, both of these sisters are not very good at talking to other people about their problems and opening up to other people, and that's what has kept them apart for so many years. It's fantastic. You're all going to love it. Just read it as soon as you can. On to what I watched this week. Remember last week when I watched a lot of Station 19 because I knew I wouldn't have a lot of watching time this week? Yeah, I started a whole new show and watched the first 2 seasons and a little bit of the 3rd season. However, it is a British show, so seasons are 6 or 7 episodes long and they're only half-hour episodes, and I was watching it with my aunt, so there's that. The show in question is Detectorists. Now, picture in your mind that one bloke from Pirates of the Caribbean with the wooden eye, and then that one villain from Sherlock that was basically H.H. Holmes. Picture neither of them being evil, just being regular blokes, and they have a hobby of going metal detecting. That's this show, and it's lovely. Apparently these guys are actually friends in real life, and they actually go metal detecting in real life, which is how this show got written and directed, and it's just lovely. It's one of those shows where it's just so calming and it's so nice, and there's just banter and not a lot happens. Enough happens that there is a plot, but like it's not a do or die. It's just so soothing and calming to watch. So if you have access to any streaming service that has this, I definitely think you should watch it because it's a lot of fun. I also stayed current on Canada's Drag Race, and this was a reunion that turned into a battle royale to get from the final 4 to the top 3. It was kind of fun to see the previous queens again. I usually kind of try to skip these episodes because there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, I don't really care. I want to see the creative things that they're doing. But I did enjoy that they did the battle royale at the end, and we kind of figured out who was going to go on, and I was kind of nail biting because it looked for a second that somebody that should win was maybe gonna go, and I was not happy about it. As for movies, the first night we got here we decided to watch a Christmas movie together, and we watched Deck the Halls, which is about Danny DeVito and Matthew Broderick basically having a huge rivalry about Danny DeVito's character putting up way too many lights on his house because he wants to be able to be seen from space because he just wants to feel special, and him basically pissing off Matthew Broderick's character the whole time. This feud ends up wrecking both of their family lives. It's Christmas, people need to get along, all of those things. It was pretty fun. We also of course watched Love Actually because I hadn't watched that this Christmas season yet. It's always just a delight. I love how many different awesome actors are in it. I love the different storylines. I love that sometimes people still go, oh wait, that's that character from this thing, and pick up little things that they hadn't picked up before. It's very intricate. It's very lovely. If you're one of those people that hates this movie, that's fine. Just don't tell me about it because I don't care. Another movie directed by Richard Curtis that I hadn't actually seen before is Notting Hill. We watched that one last night and it was a delight. There were definitely some things that I had heard before, such as a certain 3-line speech near the end that is pretty famous. I was like, oh, that's what this comes from, cool. It was also really weird to see Hugh Bonneville in something that wasn't Downton Abbey. If, like me, you had never seen this before and had no idea what it's about this woman who's a famous actress and this guy that owns a bookshop, which means I was automatically invested in his life. And she comes into the bookshop one day and they have a chance meeting, and he realizes who she is but is not like a dweeb about it, whereas other people are, including Dylan Marin, who shows up for like a scene, and that was funny. It's about their unlikely romance, and they have multiple chances to get it right because it keeps going wrong, and then they'll spend months apart and they won't talk to each other, and then suddenly they'll be like, oh, we should be together, and then something else will stop them from being together. So I had a little bit of mixed feelings because there were certain things that I was just like, wow, she could have treated him way better. That would have been nice. But ultimately people like happy endings, so it ends happily. The other book I listened to, but I just listened to this one, unlike the first book I talked about, which I listened to and read with my eyeballs, was Where We Go From Here, and this was the group read for the Queer Lit Readathon. This was fantastic. This has 3 different point of view characters. 2 of them meet at an HIV clinic. One of them is positive, one of them is negative, and then the third character is the ex-boyfriend of the one that is negative. This has to do with the queer culture in Brazil, what it's like to be positive for HIV, what that looks like, what the stigma is like, how these 3 different characters experience it very differently, and then how their lives intersect. I absolutely loved this book, and when we got to the 80% mark and somebody was mean to one of these boys, I just wanted to inflict violence on that character. I also love that we picked this as the group read because it destigmatizes HIV and AIDS, and it gets you a lot of information. You learn a lot as the characters are learning, and I just love that this is getting more information out there because this is a topic that so many people know so little about. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your computer. I'll also be putting out a vlog. I haven't put it together yet. It'll probably be up sometime this week, and you'll get my in real-time reactions to the things that I was reading. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that is down below, as well as the link to my PayPal and my Amazon wishlist in case you would like to buy me a book. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!